What's up, everybody? It's Jason Cruz here once again with another episode of The Legal Submission. And no legal case to go over in this episode of The Legal Submission. Rather, we are going to take a little bit of a business review of Noche UFC 306, which took place this past Saturday at the Sphere. And it definitely was a spectacle to see. The UFC, I would say, I was very impressed with the production value, specifically with the costumes of the ring girls. I don't think that the UFC will win an Emmy for its production of the stories within the Sphere, but I think the costumes and the decor were very good. I would say that from a viewership standpoint at the arena, it would seem more like the Sphere was the star, and I think they intimated, the UFC intimated, or right out just said that the Sphere was going to be the star of this pay-per-view event, and certainly it was. Now, it was a sellout. There was some speculation as far as how tickets were doing, because as we know, tickets were very pricey to get into the Sphere. Definitely, the Sphere is at this point right now where it's a spectacle to go see any event. U2 was there prior, and I think that's how Dana got the idea in his head to hold it there. Definitely something to see. Will more sports go to the Sphere to hold events? I would say no. That would be, definitely a sporting event could be held there, but as far as the costs go, it would be hard to profit from something like this. Definitely the UFC did. If we are to believe them on its face, it did draw a gate of $22 million per the UFC. Dana White indicated they spent $20 million on production costs. So there you go. You got a $2 million positive right there. If we were to straight do a deduction from that, but obviously there's more costs there. Merchandise, the UFC indicated, was tip top as far as sales. I assume that many people wanted to grab some UFC gear. Largest merchandise sale in its history, per the UFC. The gate, 16,024 tickets were made available and sold, making it a $22 million gate, and the arena, or the Sphere, looked packed once the main card got going. Now, one of the reasons why many people speculated on how the UFC event was going to do at the Sphere is because how much the ticket prices were. Definitely 5 or 6 stories up. If there's a couple views there, pictures taken where it looks like there's 5 or 6 stories up and looking down into the octagon. So certainly you are looking mainly at the screens to see any particular action. Now, 16,024 tickets sold into 22 million gross would make an average ticket of $1,372.94, which is pretty pricey considering that Octagon side was exorbitant. I believe 10,000 I had looked at one time was for just one seat at ringside. At the time of, if you looked at Ticketmaster on the day of or the day before UFC Noche, there were still tickets available to be sold. Now, maybe it was a case of which there were people that were looking to sell, and then just went ahead and went in themselves. Ticket brokers maybe were a part of that as well, but there were tickets that were still available from the resale market. Now, definitely the UFC is only specifically talking about the the sales it has on the primary market, and it doesn't care about the ticket brokers to ticket resellers. Now there could be a issue, a thing in which the UFC sold tickets to ticket brokers. I don't know that firsthand, but definitely the gate was there to be had. $22 million, making it the biggest gate in UFC history, second to the UFC event held at Madison Square Garden for the very first time, which had Conor McGregor main eventing against Eddie Alvarez. Third, I believe, was UFC 229 in October of 2000. Correct me if I'm wrong. 2018, 2019. Which had Khabib and Conor McGregor, if you recall that memorable after fight brawl in the octagon. Then we actually, to round out the top five, you have UFC 300, which took place earlier this year in April, UFC 303 in June, which was supposed to be the return of Conor McGregor, but did not happen. Still, it had a big gate. Notably, both of those events were main evented by Alex Pereira. So, just from a TKO perspective, UFC is doing great. 3 of its top grossing gates in the history of the company occur this year. Definitely a great accomplishment for Dana White. He sold like hell this UFC 306 at the Sphere. There was a lot of promotion around it. Dana's love letter to Mexican combat sports. I'm not sold on that talking point, but definitely it was his own vision of what Mexican combat sports was. I would have liked to have known if there was any more deeper research into a lot of the movies and stories that they presented during the fights. Was did they contact a lot of the great old Mexican fighters, a lot of the historical information that they provided would be interesting to know about, things of that nature. Yet, I think this was a great presentation. Would it be something you'd go to? I mean, you'd have to be a hardcore fan to want to go to this and pay that much money. A lot of that stuff, especially on this weekend, where in fact Canelo was fighting across town. I'm sure rates at hotels on the Strip were jacked up to the hilt. But yeah, so it definitely it was a great event to be had. The fights not so much. It was a great event, but the fights not so much. I think that Dana White intimated that the co-main and the main event lacked the drama, the action that the UFC wants to associate its brand with. I don't think it in any way hurt the UFC as it enters into a period where it will start to negotiate for a new media rights deal. I believe that Dana White stated that there were several executives looking at the event that were present at the event to take a peek at what the UFC had to offer. I think notably Jeff Bezos was there as his Amazon Prime event, as his Amazon Prime is looking for more sporting events, perhaps. There's always going back to ESPN Digital, which Mark Shapiro had indicated they would like to do, but obviously the door is always open to negotiation and seeing what will happen next. Let's talk a little bit about what the media deal would entail and who it would go through. Mark Shapiro at a Goldman Sachs investor conference last week indicated that they were happy with Disney, ESPN Plus. They were the anchor of ESPN Plus during the pandemic because it held so many UFC events that it was new content during a time where the pandemic had a lot of us looking at old reruns, and there was nothing new. So UFC really helped them. The UFC, and even with a subscription base, pay-per-view buys have been extraordinary. They've done nothing but go up, and while we have certain pay-per-views that are duds or not sold as much as others, I think overall the UFC has been great on ESPN Digital. Now they have, according to Shapiro, a exclusive period to negotiate with ESPN. I think that's I believe it's January or February of next year until April, and then at that point, at the end, April 15th, I believe is the date. They can go ahead and solicit other offers. Definitely, he has claimed that there are other offers out there or intimated to Shapiro. Would the UFC go somewhere else? Of course they would. They originally came from Fox to ESPN for the money, and you could only suspect that they are looking for the biggest amount of money possible, while retaining some sort of exclusivity power over production values and things like that. Specifically, Dana White probably wants to have some still control over the presentation of the UFC brand. What could that look like? It could be something where Shapiro says that they break up UFC rights multiple ways. Now, what does that mean? I think actually last night AEW, All Elite Wrestling, has renewed its media rights deal with Warner Brothers Discovery to be back on TBS TNT. And it looks like True TV. We all know True TV simply because in the springtime we turn it on because the March Madness is on, NCAA men's basketball tournament. That's the only time we probably watch that. Now True TV is looking to get into more sports, and that's why All Elite Wrestling, although as an official announcement hasn't been made, All Elite Wrestling is going back to Warner Brothers Discovery. Now, UFC similarly could do something of that nature. It's doing it right now with ESPN Digital, and then the main ESPN is held to have sports. Could it also break up its UFC fight nights with UFC with bigger UFC cards on other platforms like Max or Amazon or all these other types of streaming, Netflix perhaps. WWE Raw is on Netflix. Perhaps they will be the streaming venue will be something to look forward to in the future. It will be an interesting landscape for the UFC. It's right now on a ascension that is quite remarkable, to be honest with you. I mean, with the level of cards that they haven't had Conor McGregor or John Jones on a card yet they're still selling out all of these arenas and venues. I mean, UFC 306 was main evented by Sean O'Malley and Merab Dvalishvili, and we're talking about bantamweights. So the sky is the limit for the UFC at this particular point. We'll see how big they can go from here. Now, just to close this out, I think the question of will the UFC ever return to the Sphere, it comes to mind. Now, Dana White has indicated that they have a contract with MGM to hold all of their events in Vegas at the T-Mobile Arena. The UFC is one of the anchor tenants of T-Mobile Arena, similar to the Las Vegas Knights or any other professional team. They are the anchor, meaning they are one of the main tenants of that arena. Dana White received special permission to hold this event at the Sphere simply because of, again, this is essentially a Dana White passion project where he wanted to do this. He saw what the Sphere had and wanted to be the first professional sporting event in the Sphere. Now the NHL draft held a draft there, but not a sporting event. So he wanted to be first. Definitely a unique experience. But would the UFC, if it had the opportunity to go back again? White indicated how great and proud he was of the event. It was definitely something to see if you were there. But again, $20 million in production costs. There was a lot going on into it. I think that the ticket sales from that standpoint would be hard to do yet again. I know that White believed that there was nothing. The ticket sales were similar to other events, but still with a lot more in production costs and sunk costs. There is a higher degree of execution and pressure on making sure you hit the margins that you want to hit. So we will see if that happens. I know he indicated one and done, but never say never is another thing to look. Never say never is another saying that could happen as soon as maybe next year. Anyway, this is Jason Cruz for the Legal Submission. Have a good one.